Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Carissa Carrington. I am the Marketing and Business Development Manager at Tranquility Credit Union. I want to thank you all this afternoon for taking the time out of your busy schedules to tune in and learn more about the roles and responsibilities of our statutory credit union committees. I will be your host this afternoon and more or less the moderator for this evening's sessions. So it's about 6:10 p.m. and we would like to officially begin. So we will start by our usual with the credit union prayer. And I want to ask, I see Director Jarvis is on our call. I want to ask Director Jarvis if he will lead us this afternoon in reciting of our credit union prayer. Director Jarvis? All right, it seems he isn't hearing me. So join me as I recite the credit union prayer where you are. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. You're hearing me. Okay. Go ahead, Director Jarvis. My apologies. You Mr. Jarvis?
He might be having connectivity issues.
Yeah, some connectivity issues.
All right, no problem. I will lead you all. So again, we close our eyes and we join in prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I just want to cover some brief house rules. We're here to learn and we're here to interact. But of course, we want to ensure, especially given this afternoon's weather, inclement weather, we want to make sure we can all enjoy respectfully. So for this session, we would have all microphones muted and all cameras off. If you do need to ask a question, please raise your hand. We're using the raise hand icon that's located on the application. We want to make it interactive. So we will also have a questions session dedicated at the end of the segment after the facilitator presents. So you can also ask the questions at that time if you wish. And some persons may be a little voice shy or camera shy. You are also free to type your questions in the chat, right? And we can facilitate questions there. Right. Before I introduce this afternoon's speaker, I want to ask our nominations committee chairperson, Ms. Annalisa Arlen Benjamin, who is also our secretary to the board of directors, to deliver a few opening remarks and share with you all some wonderful context as to this afternoon sessions. Ms. Arlen Benjamin.
Hello, good day. Well, I did put on my camera for 1 sec, just so I know if it's blocked.
That's okay. Speakers only
Okay.
at one at a time. Yes.
Okay, so I did put it on just to say hello to everyone and welcome everyone to this session. You know, our credit union is a democratic, people-based organization making access to financial services and generating wealth in a different and unique way. And we need, as a democratic organization, we really need people to participate. So we really do need members to don't be scared, don't be timid, but to show and share their talents by actually accepting nomination for any one of the roles in the credit union, from the board to the credit committee to the supervisory committee. And you know what? We have other committees too. So, you know, public education committee, we have assets and liabilities committee, but we need people to contribute and share their knowledge and their skills and their talents for us all, because that's the ethos of the credit union movement. So thank you for all joining and at least listening. Of course, this is step one. Guess what? This year, like last year, we don't want to go out too often. We don't have to extend the nominations until we can't get people to put their hands up and be brave. So we want this to be really different in 2025. And we started last year with under the brilliant leadership of the last nomination committee. In the year before, we did a policy. So we are building and building. And we just want to be able to encourage more people to share their talents and come on board. So thank you for at least step one, and each one tell one, please. So I look forward to a lovely session this evening. And thank you again. That's it, Priscilla.
Thank you so much, Miss Allen Benjamin. And she's indeed right. You know, the credit union thrives on volunteerism and the spirit of cooperation. So, you know, we are blessed with education, talent, and some of us even have time, right? So share each one with the other. Step one, and we thank you for taking it boldly today by coming and getting the information. And you can stay tuned and look out for step two. Right? And just allow me to clarify in terms of the cameras, it's in relation to in general, if once this session is happening, cameras should generally be off. However, if you do have to speak and you want to show your face, it's no problem to show your video as you are speaking on the screen, but when that's been allowed by the facilitator. All right. This afternoon, it is my task to also introduce you to our facilitator, Mr. Nigel Matthew. He's no stranger to TCU. He is the lead consultant at NEM Leadership Consultants and a hybrid management. NEM Leadership Consultants is a hybrid management and leadership consultancy practice. Their aim is to assist businesses in achieving growth and stability. Mr. Matthews has over 30 years of management experience and executive experience in the finance industry. He is a chartered accountant, a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants of the UK, a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of TNT. That's ICAT. Nigel is also the holder of a postgraduate master's degree in finance from Henley Management College. He is a certified anti-money laundering professional. His certification comes from the Florida International Bankers Association, and his expertise includes leadership, management, development, strategic planning, business transformation, change management, systems audits, mortgage portfolio management, coaching, and AML laundering compliance. We want to thank Mr. Matthews this afternoon, and we look forward to hearing what he has to share with us concerning the roles and responsibilities of the Board of Directors. Mr. Matthews, welcome to TCU. I will stop sharing and you can share now. Mr. Matthews?
Hi, yes, pleasant good evening to Tranquility Credit Union and the number of persons on the line with us for this session organized by, of course, Tranquility Credit Union. It's a three-part series, so I think this is the first leg, Board of Directors, and then there'll be the supervisory committee and the credit committee. So again, it's always a pleasure to be in the company of the family of Tranquility Credit Union, to have a discussion. You know, we can all participate and of course learn from each other as we go along. So I'm going to take my opportunity now to share the screen. I hope that you all are seeing. Are you all seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Right, good, lovely. All right, so I know the weather is very inclement this evening. I know that most of us most likely at home. I'm in my office in Chaguanas, and of course some of us will be mobile and of course taking it in on our devices. And I guess that is one of the I would say the niceties of utilization and this level of connectivity. It doesn't matter where you are, you can still function and participate. All right, so my task this evening is really to look at roles and responsibility of credit unions, but in the context of the committee that is called the Board of Directors. And I heard the secretary talk about in terms of the nominations committee and people desires of coming on board by volunteering and going through the process, and hopefully the membership at the annual general meeting will elect people to serve not only on the Board of Directors only, but certainly the other committees like the credit committee and of course the statutory committee. So my task is on the Board of Directors this evening. Right, so my first question, you know, when people willing to come on board to serve on a credit union is that what positive difference would you make? Or what positive difference can you make to the sustainability and more so the longevity of this august body that they call Tranquility Credit Union, existing in excess of 60 years? Okay, so whatever we do in life, whether you're an employee, whether you're the general manager in accounting and compliance, in IT and so forth, you know, you really want to make a difference. But the difference with being on a board of directors of a credit union, it is a voluntary one. Okay, and you are expected to serve and to contribute, and of course to be positive in the outlook of where you want a credit union to go. Voluntary in the sense that there is no pay. Okay, unlike people who are working, and of course, you know, they get paid. But of course, there are other benefits of serving on the board of a credit union. We also have to recognize that credit unions today, 2025, is far different from credit unions that existed in the 1970s, in the 1960s, in the 1950s, in the 1990s, as the case to be. You know, it's changed and the whole environment has changed, you know. We have more laws, we have more responsibilities, we have more challenges, and equally, we have more opportunities. So I'm speaking to you in the context of someone who has served for many years in the credit union in all, well, not all, but different capacities, as being part of a staff member, being part of the management of the credit union, being part of the board of directors of the credit union, being part of as an executive member, as a vice president, and as a president as well. So I want to bring my experience and my learnings to this session today. And of course, I do serve the credit union movement in a different capacity, in a more consultative role. So I guess, you know, I may be able to add some sort of value. But when we look at, you know, specifically looking at the act, and I know that most people here are desirous of being to serve in the credit union, they are members of the credit union, but of course we operate under the Corporate Societies Act 1971 as amended. So that is our foundational policy document that we have to subscribe to function as a credit union, whether you are the general manager, staff, member of the credit supervisory or board, as the case to be. And when we look at one of the interpretations in terms of the listing there, the board of management or other directing body to whom the management of the affairs of the society is entrusted. So the word there is entrusted in the sense that members would elect you to manage and direct the affairs of the credit union. Okay? That's a really, really daunting task, audacious in my view, in the sense that I have to direct, I have to lead. Do I have the skills? Do I have the confidence? Do I have the capabilities? Do I have the competence? How would I get help? You know, what are the risk factors? Would there be anyone, you know, watching my back should something go wrong? So this is a very critical role that you may be entrusted to do on behalf of the members, okay? Because the members would elect you as a board member collectively with the other board members to manage the credit union during the course of one AGM to the next. And of course, at the other AGM, you know, you go and you account for your stewardship, meaning what have you done for the benefit of the members. So that is what, you know, credit unions all about. And that, of course, came from the Cooperative Societies Act. When we look specifically at the bylaws of a credit union, which is really the constitution of the credit union, how you are governed, how you are managed, how you are operated, all those details will be inside of your bylaws. In this case, Tranquility Credit Union bylaws. And of course, the bylaws must be consistent with the Cooperative Societies Act, whether that is the legislation itself or the regulations. So looking at Tranquility Credit Union, Bylaw 2323A is telling you as a director or someone desirous of coming on the board or being elected, stating quite clearly, there shall be a board of directors which shall be entrusted with the governance, general management of the affairs of the society. Now, each organization would have different structures. We talk about general management. So we want to let you know that Tranquility Credit Union, as it stands now, there is what we call a management structure. So all of you are part of the board. You are really not really responsible for the day-to-day operation. That is a delegative one, and you delegate those responsibilities through a general manager, other senior officials of the credit union, and of course, other staff. So you're responsible for the engagement of these professional people who will then act upon your behalf and execute the policies made by the board of directors. Okay, so I don't want people to get a feel like, okay, I'm a board of directors, I can go in the credit union every minute, as the case may be, and direct staff. No, that responsibility lies with the general manager, and general manager is taking instructions from the board of directors. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is 23D. The board shall exercise all the powers of the society except those reserved to the general meeting of the members, and in particular shall have the following powers. And, you know, in the bylaws, you know, you have a number of different duties. So this is really telling you that here what? You have all the powers to direct, of course, within the law, and of course, good sense, common sense as well, between the general meetings, because there are certain powers that are reserved for the membership, because the membership of a credit union is the supreme body, okay? And but of course, the members cannot come and make decisions on a day-to-day basis, a month-to-month basis. Hence, the reason for the board of directors to do so outside of the general meeting. And at the end of at general meeting now, the board, of course, is responsible to, you know, account for its stewardship, as the case may be. Right. A number of reasons people might wish to join a credit union, a board, Tranquility Credit Union, as the case should be. You might be committed to the vision where the organization intends to go, which is good. You might have a genuine concern for members, which I think is a very good principle for wanting to be on the board, because credit unionism is all about people. Okay, it is not about numbers, it's not about profit, but of course it is about it's about efficiency and of course adding value for the longevity of the credit union. As we know, you get monies from share savings, and of course you've got to manage that in terms of loans, investments, make some money, pay staff, pay expenses, and of course build the credit union through reserves. And you cannot do that if you don't have a concern for members. Okay, you may have a particular skill. Whether that skill is in IT, we need IT specialists and IT people with capabilities within the credit union. We need accounting skills. We need operational skills. We need marketing skills. Okay, all those different types of skill, you should be in a credit union. If you believe that you have that and you can contribute, I think that you know, that is really a good thing. Okay, but the last thing you want to know is joining the credit union to seek a personal financial benefit. No, being a board member, it is about service to the greater good of the organization and by extension, the credit union movement. And we say, of course, ask not what the credit union could do for you, but what you could do for the credit union. So that should be the guiding principle of willing to serve as a board member on Tranquility Board of Directors. As an individual too, we talk about collective responsibility on the board. Board decisions are made through motions, as the case would be. Someone would move the motion, someone would second the motion, and the chairman would bring that motion to the floor. And of course, there's a vote, simple majority in terms of voting. So, you know, you want to have that collective responsibility. It does not mean to say you cannot have a different view. And I think the essence of any effective board is really managing diversities of views, because, you know, you want to, you know, to listen to different aspects of what people have to say. And then at the end of the day, you make a decision. But as an individual, these are some of the areas that we believe that you should focus on, stay informed, take advantage of educational opportunities. I did say there's no payment, and of course that is also within the bylaws, meaning that someone cannot serve as an elected officer if they are getting paid, meaning as a salary. However, there could be stipend, there could be reimbursement for expenses, and yes, there are educational opportunities both locally and abroad. So I guess in terms of board development, I think that is something good for you, and of course you continue to contribute positively towards the goodwill of the credit union. So these are the different areas as an individual you may want to look at and believe, yes, I can see myself being a board member, being a team player, listening, respecting my colleagues, and I'm making decisions on behalf of the organization. All right, so that is what we have there. So as Carissa, the moderator, mentioned, you can maybe send your questions if you have any, or comments, as the case will be in the chat, or you can hold it until we reach the Q&A segment, and then we can, you know, all have a decision to make. All right, so I wouldn't go into the details of the duties of the board as enshrined within the credit union's bylaws, but just to let you know, these are, I think there are 20-something, so quite a lot. So as a board member, you have a daunting task of really managing the credit union along all these lines, you know. The first one, to make decisions on application for membership. Yeah, you're responsible for admitting members in the credit union. No one else can do that but the board of directors, okay? There might be issues in terms of 5, you have to deal with complaints because members might be aggrieved of some issue. It might be an issue with the credit union, might be an issue with another member, as the case would be, you know, whatever it is, the board of directors would have to deal with those things. If you look at some other duties that you are responsible for, a very major decision, I hope it is not a common one. I believe it is not a common one. It's really an exceptional one to expel members in accordance with these bylaws. So within the bylaws, there would be a provision or piece of, you know, law, so to speak, under which conditions someone can be expelled. Maybe the person is very inimical to the organization, embarrassing the organization, bringing the organization into dispute. The board will have to sit, arbitrate, and make certain decisions about that. All right. The last point there, to enter into contracts on behalf of the society. Tranquility Credit Union, in my view, you know, I think it's excess of $200 million. That's a very hefty sum of monies under management. And here now you are responsible for making contracts. And whatever contracts that you can influence legitimately and honestly, of course, for the goodwill of the credit union, that's a major decision. So you don't want to you know, to participate in a decision that can, you know, cause harm, you know, against the society as it is. So I just picked out a few. Another set of responsibilities you have to look at is to formulate rules and policies of the society. Because as a large organization, it's millions of dollars under management, you cannot really run the organization without any framework. And the framework we're talking about is a set of policies and guidelines and controls in order to have that level of transparency, accountability, and integrity within the operations of the society. And that is governed through policies that you are responsible for approval. Okay, and even influencing as well. We know we have management and you'll have the consultants and the technocrats will inform the decision in terms of information. But at the end of the day, you have to make that very important decision. If you look at Roman 8, to recommend the rate of dividends, bonuses. Remember we talk about, you should be concerned about members. All right, and if you're concerned about members, as a board member, you should consider about member savings, okay? And members will save a Tranquility Credit Union if they believe at the end of the day, the board will come to the AGM and recommend what they consider to be a decent or market rate for dividends based upon the investments that they would have made at the credit union on shares. All right, but then you can only pay dividends if you have a surplus. So your job as a director is to ensure that the credit union is run efficiently so that at the end of the day, your income is more than your expenses, you make a surplus, and you can pay members dividends. Members have more confidence in the organization and they save more and they grow the organization as you go along. So quite a number of things that you have to do. Another set of duties. For instance, I know the secretary spoke about, yes, you have 3 major statutory committees, board, supervisory, and credit, but she also spoke about subcommittees. And that is one of your duties as well. If you look at Roman 20, to appoint such subcommittees as may be necessary and to determine their terms of reference, a very major decision. And you too might be on a subcommittee, whether that's the HR committee, the audit committee, the building committee, the governance committee, the asset liability management committee, the marketing committee, the IT committee, whatever committee there might be, you're responsible for selecting those committees and of course contributing in terms of the expertise on those committees in order to guide and assist the board in its decision-making function collectively. All right, so quite a lot. And, this is, I believe, the last set here, right? Quite a lot. So, you shouldn't take it lightly in terms of wanting to contribute to Tranquility Credit Union in the form of being a director. Again, once you are being elected as a director within the structure of Tranquility Credit Union, like all other credit unions, there's an executive. So there's always the possibility that you might become an executive member. And whereas that could be the secretary, the assistant secretary, maybe the vice president, and even the president, as the case to be. So you have that opportunity to really contribute, in different roles while you're on the board of directors. But we want to look at what we call principal duties, okay? Principal duties meaning what are you expected to do as a board member? So we want to look at 3 major principal duties, and we talk about the fiduciary duty. That's one. We talk about a duty of care, and we also talk about a statutory duty. So I'm going to touch on each one briefly because, of course, we have some more information to share, and I'm hoping that in terms of clarification or edification on other areas, we can have a discourse, a discussion, a sort of a rapport at the end of the session, as the case may be. All right, so the first one, fiduciary duty, we have a number of things, but basically what that is saying is that you should seek the best interest of the organization. And that organization is called Tranquility Credit Union. In other words, your mandate as a board of directors in law is to serve the interest of Tranquility Credit Union, which is a legal body corporate, a legal entity. In other words, this credit union has an identity on its own. Someone can sue Tranquility Credit Union, and Tranquility Credit Union can sue someone else, okay? So if you are a board of directors entrusted with the management of the credit union, then you seek the interest of the credit union. You don't seek, it's gonna sound bad, but basically that is how it is. You don't serve the other members of the board. You don't serve management. You don't serve members. You serve Tranquility Credit Union. And if you do that, by extension, everyone else will be served, okay? So that your loyalty and your duty is to Tranquility Credit Union and no one else. And if you believe, there might be a conflict in terms of, if you participate in a decision that affects you as an individual or an immediate family member or someone that you may have a business relationship with, you should excuse yourself because there's always a view that that decision may be tainted or compromised. Okay, so we just wanted to bring that, to the table, and that is what we call the fiduciary duty. Some people call it fiduciary duty, as it is to be. You serve the interest of the organization, no one else. Another important duty as a board of director is what we call a duty of care. Because here you are entrusted to make decisions on behalf of the membership. And the membership, I don't think would like to know that you are making decisions and you're not taking all factors into account. Okay? So the duty of care duty is really looking at being careful, the diligence and the skill that a reasonable, prudent person would exercise in comparable circumstances. In other words, before you make a decision, you should be informed. Before you make a decision, you should get information. You should get the facts as much as possible. I know from a leadership standpoint, decision-making is about judgment, okay? You may not have all the information, but you cannot neglect the responsibility to really get as much information as possible. If you don't know, you seek, solicit advice, you get counsel from legal people, counsel from other persons, and make the decision on behalf of the membership, and of course, on behalf of Tranquility Credit Union. So we cannot really, want to make decisions and arbitrate on a particular technical issue. In other words, if the credit union is looking at a building and you really don't have much civil engineering and risk management, you send to the board of directors, you have to make a decision, you should try to get information. And bringing that utterance in a board meeting, I think is very helpful to sort of make a contribution that, Mr. Chairman or Mr. President, we need to get more advice. We need to get information. We need to get information from the experts before we really indulge in this decision making. And to me, that's a duty of care that one should look at. The other one is a statutory duty. Okay, you have to uphold the goodwill and the good nature of the credit union. You want to make sure that the credit union reputation is maintained and enhanced. You want people to see the credit union in a positive light. We call it the facade of the organization. What do they see? What members see? What the public see in Tranquility Credit Union? So whatever laws there might be that you have to subscribe to, definitely the Corporate Societies Act. You have a lot of employees. You got to, be involved in labor laws to make sure that, you have collective agreements and all these different things. Industrial relations would be part of that as well. Environmental laws, you just cannot pollute willy-nilly, as we say. We have a lot of anti-money laundering situation. You have to observe those laws and other laws. And that is one of your duties as a board member, individually and collectively. Ensure that the Tranquility Credit Union is a compliant one. Okay, so you got to be part of that. So the principal duties we talk about, we just don't want to forget those three: fiduciary duty, a duty of care, and of course, a statutory one. So we got to mention, and you got to kind of know that in terms of what you're getting into, in terms of that role as a board member. And as I said, there's a possibility you might be an executive, president, vice president, secretary, as the case would be. And again, symbolically, people will be looking up at you in terms of maintaining those secret duties, so that everyone else can, emulate your actions in a positive way. All right, so we sort of wanted to mention that. In addition to that, we have what we call the role of the board. I know we went through a number of things which is based upon bylaw 23D and a number of different duties. But basically, in terms of managing the affairs of the credit union, we want to look at what you're supposed to do, so at least we can distinguish the how to put it, the board of directors role from management, from operations, as the case to be. Because you see, you're responsible for policy, right? Management is responsible for the execution and implementation of those policies. So you do not want to be making the policies and you try to implement. Should something go wrong, where would the accountability lies? Right? So we want to kind of, separate that in terms of what you're supposed to do, as a board member. We talk about set direction, okay? The board of directors is the decision-making power of the organization outside of the annual general meeting. So if that is in fact so, you got to set the tone, you got to set the direction, okay? You got to influence the mission of the organization, the vision where the organization would like to go. You got to be part of the crafting or the brainstorming sessions in terms of coming up with what we call a strategic plan. In other words, you determining the strategic direction of the credit union taking into account a number of other factors, okay? You got to delegate authority to management and other people within the organization. You got to articulate, safeguard, model, and promote organizational values. And sadly today in our society, ethics, in my personal view, is at a somewhat low level. You understand? But then, you know, all is not lost. You know, we can also be positive in terms of changing that type of mindset or changing that reality of ethics being at a low level in our society. And, you know, we can do something about that, you know. So that is what you do in terms of setting the direction for Tranquility Credit Union. Another area you need to do is to ensure resources are provided to management and to the operations of the credit union. Because it is unfair, in my view, to hold management accountable for certain things that they did not achieve, yet you fail to provide the resources and the support to management, okay? Or maybe another committee as well. So you need to look at identifying human and financial resources in terms of implementing the strategies in order for the vision to be realized. You got to establish policies, so at least that people can use that framework to know how to operate. You know, what flexibility do I have? Do I go out of the framework? Do I stay within it? That is your responsibility through policy making, and of course, ensure that resources are available. So that is something that you need to do. And of course, when you're exercising your duty of care, I'm quite certain, you know, that would be a positive one. You may also need to have oversight, because whereas you set the direction in terms of the strategic plan, the strategic direction, that's fine. You also aid in terms of providing resources, that's fine. You don't just walk away from the table. No, you got to make sure that whatever plans you might have, whether it's budgets or some major strategic, you know, procurement or new technology, as the case may be, there's oversight in terms of performance, in terms of accountability, and in terms of deliverables and achievements. So that is your responsibility to make sure that whatever plans there might be, you know, there's an oversight in terms of a review. You may need more resources, you may need more time, you may need to change your objectives a bit, you may need to change the strategies. And yeah, you may need to have some sort of discipline as well in terms of people who are not performing, notwithstanding the provision of resources. So all these things would be within your purview. Set direction, provide resources, and of course, have oversight. Because if you don't, you may have a difficulty accounting for your stewardship at the annual general meeting. All right, and that is what you have to do. All right, so we just have some stuff there in terms of other functions, you know, just a list in terms of compensation for management people, risk management issues, IT issues, you know, and those type of stuff, right? So I think we would have covered that, you know, as we go along. I also want to introduce you to what we call 3 layers of governance. And I think this is really critical for a board member, because the board member is really, and the collectively, the board of directors, responsible for the organization. Whether people see the organization from an external standpoint, whether there are things that are internal to the organization, and whether things that pertain to you as an individual. So the 3 layers really speak to the external governance issue, the internal governance mandate, and of course, you, the individual director. What is your role in all of this? Okay. So from an external standpoint, you know, you want to know that Tranquility Credit Union is a transparent organization, meaning information is readily available to the members, to the public. And part of that information is that there's an annual report that the credit union would have to do before it goes to an annual general meeting. That would have the financial affairs of the organization, what transpired in the last financial period, and the board of directors would present their report. The supervisory committee would present its report as well, and so too is the credit and other subcommittees. So you really want to know that. From an external standpoint, I think we mentioned this, you want people to see Tranquility Union as a compliant, someone that would live credentials, because within the Cooperative Societies Act, for instance, one of the mandates of the act is that you must appropriate 10% towards capital. So that's what we call a prudential requirement, and you're responsible to ensure that is done. All right. And in terms of public accountability as well, yes, you are accountable to your members who are also the owners, but you're on Marvel Road. You're also, to me, accountable to the community. and by extension, the authorities. So you're not alone in terms of an island on yourself, but there's general accountability in terms of public responsibility. So that's the external part that you have to be part of. The internal part of the organization, you want to know that there's a structure. There's a management structure in place. There are maybe what you call JDs, job descriptions. There's some sort of performance system. There's some sort of compensation policy as the case be. So you have a structure. You also want to know about continuity, whether that continuity, what we call succession planning, is within the board of directors and of course within the management. So should something happen to any one of us, we might migrate, we might get sick or something else might happen, there is continuity in the affairs of the organization. We also want to know that there's balance. In other words, you want to bring a particular skill to the board of directors. I'm not too sure you'll be comfortable if all the directors are all attorneys, or if all the directors are all accountants. No, we need much different types of skills to have that balance within the board of directors and certainly within the management of the organization. And at the end of the day, accountability in terms of you having some sort of assessment over the affairs of the credit union, a month, a quarter, 6 years, 6 months as the case to be, and certainly at the end of the year, whereby you account to the membership. All right, so we have, those things going for us. And of course, you, the individual, we expect you, the individual, to, in terms of integrity, that should go without saying, that we need to be ethical, we need to be truthful, we need to be honest in terms of discharging our responsibilities. We need to develop our skill set to be more competent in what we do. And of course, commitment. Volunteerism calls for a high degree of commitment. A commitment to the credit union, a commitment to the members, okay? To me, again, I'm talking from direct experience, you cannot be effective as a board member if you're not committed to the organization. You're not committed to serving people. It is about a love given to the organization. As I said, there's no compensation in terms of a salary, but certainly there are tremendous benefits to your own personal development and of course your contribution to the society at large. So, we have all of those things. But to me, it is really a transformational one in terms of coming on the board of directors. All right. And many times, we want change in an organization. We want to do so many different things, but we're looking at other people. What we say, no, we got to be the change. We must look within. Okay. And be positive in what we do and try to, let your action be contagious so that change can roll and, develop a momentum throughout the entire credit union and by extension, the organization and the movement. So you have heard this famous quote by Gandhi, you must become the change you want to see in the world. So whatever change you want to see, positive, I hope, you must be the change within Tranquility Credit Union and by extension, the entire movement, because you're operating what we call within the financial industry. And within the financial industry, there are different sectors. You are within the credit union sector. So if you want to see a change within the credit union sector, it begins at Tranquility and it begins with you as well. Okay, so we have to be mindful about that. Being a board of directors is about decision making. Okay, I know some of us may shy away from making decisions, but at the end of the day, the credit union cannot function if decisions are not made. we talk about, fiduciary role, we talk about duty of care. Those decisions must take those things into account. And as Drucker, the famous writer, said before, it is the #1 managerial skill, the making of effective decisions. Okay, and looking at alternatives, putting everything together, having a reason about it, taking advice, listening to your colleagues, getting advice from professionals at the case to be, and making that very important decision. All right, so it is something that we have to do. I know from a practical standpoint, some of us don't make decisions or we shy away from it. But the issue is why volunteer and you're not being part of the decision-making process? Why volunteer and you abstain in most cases? We're not saying you cannot abstain. We're not saying that, but at the same time, if everyone else abstain, then the credit union cannot move forward. All right? And we hope that you will be part of that solution. So, you know, there's a saying that a chase between a lion and a deer, who do you think will win? Now, I know the microphones are off, so I know we cannot really answer this, but this is very instructive. You know, who do you think will win if there's a chase between a lion and a deer? And what we are saying, in most cases, the deer will win. Why? Because the lion runs for food, which is a temporary or a short-term satisfaction, because you eat and you're not going to eat again until maybe next 6 hours tomorrow. That's okay. But the deer runs for his life. And the life now is his purpose, meaning the purpose of him is to stay alive. Okay, so the purpose is more important than the need, because the lion has a need for food, like all of us do, but then the deer is not running for food, he's running to keep himself alive. So the question is, what is your purpose for Tranquility Credit Union? Okay, you must have, in terms of what do you bring to the table, what would you like to see happen, how can you contribute in a team-like fashion, as the case should be. So, you know, we want to know that we have a purpose in life. We also want to know that our thinking can go beyond the walls of Tranquility Credit Union, within reason, of course. So based upon Mandela's statement, there is no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than one you are capable of living. And we would have seen over the years, Tranquility Credit Union would have lived this. Because at one point in time, Tranquility Credit Union was $50 million, was $25 million, was $10 million. Now Tranquility Credit Union, I believe, is in excess of $200 million, you know? So that, and you can go far, you can go further than that. But that could only happen through effective team playing in terms of among the directors, and of course, decision making. So we need to look at that as you being a board member. You also need to know that as you run and you manage the credit union, there will be challenges, there will be issues, there will be confusion, there will be noise, there will be messy situations, but it doesn't take you away from being effective. So what we are saying, don't be a product of the circumstances, don't get caught up too heavily in circumstances. Irrespective of those circumstances, you've got to make decisions. So you should be a product of decision-making to maneuver the waves of living, of the environment, and still come out, you know, successful. One of those circumstances would be competition. Many competition within the banks, even fellow credit unions, trying to, you know, compete or take your members, as the case would be. Those are circumstances. Your decision-making is what are you going to do about that and still grow the organization. All right, so we need to look at that. We just give the example of a tariff. We can't just throw our hands up in the air and say tariff, tariff, tariff. We got to live, we got to survive, okay? In times of change, you, meaning the board of directors, the learners, will inherit the earth, while those attached to their old certainties will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Tranquility Credit Union in 2025 is completely different from the Tranquility Credit Union in the year 2005, in the year 1995, in the year 1986, as the case should be. So we got to keep on learning because the world is evolving, the world is changing, our members are changing, our environment changing, our attitude changing, technology changing. So we can't go back to ledgers and, you know, those cards that we used to do in accounting 30 years ago. No, everything is computerized, you know, but we need the controls, you know, as the case should be. But what you should be looking at, in my view, in terms of your legacy that you would contribute and hopefully leave at the credit union, is how would I make Tranquility Credit Union better off because of my contribution that someone else can step on my shoulders to build the credit union. Okay, so it's really the foundation that you are laying for someone to continue the building process. All right, now this is not a starter phase because the foundation is fluid at any point in time. In other words, there is always the need to make progress. There's always the need to grow, as the case should be. And this is the foundation that we want you to leave. And but of course, it's conditional on what you bring to the table and how effective you are in terms of being a team player. And of course, you know, being as an individual with all the traits that we spoke about before. And the challenge for you is to ask yourself at the end of the day, you being singular in terms of being a director, can the directorate effectively lead the organization to survive in a highly disrupted business environment? You are in a business environment. In my view, in this 21st century, we are in a period of disruption. I don't think it's going to get better, but of course, it's going to get more exciting. Okay, and we need to have that positive outlook and really try to make it happen, try to survive and contribute. So when you look back in terms of what you would have done and the life that you would have touched and influenced in a positive way, you can be proud of the contribution as being a volunteer board of directors of Tranquility Credit Union. And on that note, I say thank you for listening to me for the last, well, maybe 45 or 40 minutes as the case to be. And based upon the moderator's comments, we may wish to have a discussion. So thank you very much again, Tranquility Credit Union, for inviting me to share this piece of information with respect to board of directors or people desirous of becoming a board of directors at this beautiful organization that is called Tranquility Credit Union. So over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigel. Always inspirational, always informative. I learned a lot. I feel inspired as well, seeing, quotes about change and being part of that change and even thinking broader out of not just what the world is today, but what it could be and how you can play a part in that change. That was indeed inspirational. And now we're going to move on to our question segment of the afternoon. I want to open the floor for anyone who has questions for our knowledgeable facilitator. He would have poured out, and I'm sure we have lots of burning questions. So what I would ask is for anyone who has questions to raise your hand, and once we acknowledge you, you unmute your mic and begin to ask. So the floor is now open. Does anyone have any questions? And Christine, if you are on, you can, as I'm sharing my screen, can you look for the persons who would have had their hands up, and as we begin to call on them?
Sure, no problem.
All right, I'm seeing a comment in the chat session. No, y'all are most welcome. And indeed, we do have to thank you all for tuning in. We know this afternoon didn't come without its challenges for many of us. But we really want to thank you for taking the time to listen in. And we hope, as Director Alan Benjamin so articulately expressed, this is step 1. We hope that you follow through to step 2 and 3. And I'm seeing a hand up. Dave Clement, you can unmute your mic and ask our very informed facilitator your question. Dave?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
As I said previously, the meeting was very informative, right? But one thing I wanted to note was a lot to digest also, right? As I saw that it was being recorded, would we be able to get the recording of the meeting?
Certainly, we will make that available to you all as soon as we can.
Nice, thanks.
That's
all for now.
Thank you for your contribution. Anyone else?
Wow, that means everyone was overwhelmed by Mr. Matthew and his presentation. We understand everything and have no questions, and we're going to have a lot of persons going for step 2 and applying to be a board of director member.
All right, I'm seeing one in the chat. What qualifications must you possess in order for you to be on the board of directors?
Do I need to respond now, Carissa, or?
Yes, of course,
Okay, okay.
jump right in. We're interacting here.
Right. Qualifications, I would shy away from naming a particular type of qualification in terms of a discipline. But what I do know is that the credit union, we mentioned over 200 in excess of $200 million under management. So that would call for certain skills to be applied in terms of managing those on behalf of the members. So once I believe someone who is committed, the first thing, because you can have all the qualifications in the world, if you're not committed, meaning you're not attending the meetings, you're not reading documents before a board meeting, you're not making any positive contribution in the meeting, you are being disruptive, I think that would work against the organization, even if you have a lot of qualifications in a particular discipline. Notwithstanding, we hope that whatever skill set you have, that will be piece of the puzzle to sort of complement the whole decision-making aspect of how our organization would function, meaning Tranquility Credit Union. Because at the end of the day, whatever decisions, you need to take money management into account. You need marketing, you need promotion skills, you need IT skills, you need a listening skill. You need to be interpersonal in terms of how do you communicate with other people? You know, how do you assess other people? How do you want people to see you in terms of your contribution to the organization? So that whatever skill you have, to me, it can be improvised for the benefit of the credit union. A founding skill that one must have, in my view, is the likeness for people, the concern for members, because this is a member-driven organization. All right, so that irrespective of the skill, attorney at law, or what have you, legal, you must have a concern for the members. Okay, so I think that is what someone can bring to the table. Always try to elevate himself or herself, as the case to be, by being in the know. A duty of care is really getting information that you can also get publicly, or you do your own what we call personal fact-finding or personal research, and you bring that to the table and you contribute to the decision-making process as a board member. So I hope that answers the question.
Madam Moderator, Jarvis here.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Jarvis. Go right ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
We're
me?
hearing you.
Okay, Nigel.
Yes, Mr. Jarvis.
And just to add to the question, I think in this time, and this era that we are in, and I identified purpose and passion. One of the important aspects of it is that what we try to do, and at least most of the credit unions to do, there's a lot of opportunity now. Even though you feel you are not up to the standard that you may look at, there are opportunities for training. It's always available. Always available, and the credit union tries its best to ensure that we upscale and upscale all the members on whichever committee, either board, supervisory, or whatever, to ensure that you are in tune. So have no fear, right? That whoever come in, whatever skill you have, the credit union take the opportunity to ensure that you are in tune with most of the items that are important in respect of operating on whatever committee you. That's it, Nigel.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jarvis. And yeah, I think that's a welcome note, because at the end of the day, you know, once you're elected to be a director, I think part of that is the education, and education is also built inside of the law itself. So the credit union has a responsibility to provide that mentorship, that development to all of its officers so that they can perform. It is like what I said before, providing resources to management so that they can perform. the organization has to provide the support and the development so that directors can also perform as well, notwithstanding whatever skills that you come with onto the board. That was nicely said, Mr. Jarvis.
Yes, fully endorsed, fully endorsed. And just to add it, you know, this is one such session. The biggest qualification in terms of what Mr. Matthew would have also expounded on is your level of commitment. Once you are committed to learning, anything is possible. Is there anyone else who has a question? We are learning so very much as you interact. And you reach out to, you know, find out more. There may be things that, you know, somebody touched on or mentioned on that you want to learn a little more about. We heard so many new words, maybe to some of us, fiduciary, statutory, you know, you want to dig in a little deeper. Mr. Matthews is here. We can learn so very much from him while we can.
Yeah.
Just to add to what was said before, as Director Jarvis said, and you yourself, that it's about empowerment. So we do a lot of, you use the word education, there's a lot of training that goes on a continuous basis, from as simple as learning how to understand financial statements so that we're all on the same page, to learning about AML and anti-money laundering training. And so the most important word is commitment, to turn up and have an active and willing mind to learn. Because yes, you will have to learn. Everybody had to learn. I had to learn. Other things, depending on my management skill, I had to learn. So it's just about having that commitment to put in the time and willingness to learn, because the idea is about empowerment. It's about empowerment. So we are empowered, so we can each one help one. So just remember that it's about empowerment.
Certainly, it is. It is about empowerment. Credit unions are people-driven organization, and members help members. You know, it was so unfortunate that, you know, I had a conversation with someone who's very passionate about the credit union industry, and he said members often don't realize the power that they all have. We are collective, and we're here to uplift and empower the institution that is Tranquility Credit Union for the benefit of all of us. Right? So wonderful addition, Miss Allen Benjamin. We have another question, that the credit union is statutory. So the flyer would have spoken to the statutory committees that the credit unions have. And statutory is mandated. We must have a board of directors, we must have a supervisory committee, and we must have a credit committee, right? So that each one of these sessions are tailored towards understanding what's required by each one of those statutory or required committees, right? And Mr. Matthews, I will direct the other parts of this question for you. For those interested being on the board but do not possess the skill set. Oh, she asked if we train them. And yes, training is certainly provided once you are elected, because remember, it's a democratic process. So as Ms. Allen Benjamin said, this is step one, the information that you need to become part of the board. And then step two, which will be rolled out a little later, the nominations process of nominating yourself to serve. And the other part takes place at the AGM. Should you be elected? Yes, training is certainly provided for our elected officers, right? So, Mr. Matthews, I thought that was something that was more specific. My apologies. But yes, we do
Okay.
provide training. And I have a question for you from another person who is messaging privately here. They want just a key summary of some of the things to consider before applying for a board in terms of So what do I need to consider? Some key things that I need to consider before putting my name forward for being a board of director or for being a member on the board of directors.
All right. Well, first to begin, you must, of course, you must be a member of the credit union and a member in good standing. Good standing primarily means that you don't have a loan and the loan is in arrears, meaning delinquent. Okay. That is, of course, a requirement within the act that, someone who is delinquent, and other things. I wouldn't go into other things that better you bankrupt. That is, in my view, possible but far-fetched. Okay, but what I think you need to do before put forward your name is that the credit union from time to time, in addition to a session like this, do provide webinars on certain aspects. So you can take the advantage of attending those sessions. So you can know more about the credit union movement, the philosophy, the beginnings, the issues, that kind of stuff. But you must have the time because it is something that you got to commit to. The board determines its own dates and time for meetings. So you need to be aware of those dates and be aware that you can reschedule your activities to attend those meetings, what we call the statutory board meeting. So I know the word statutory has read its head a lot this evening, but it really means that something that must be compulsory, something that must be done by law. So in other words, once you are elected onto the board of directors of Tranquility Credit Union, by law, the credit union must keep board meetings. Hence the reason for statutory board meetings. The president or the executive can't say, well, I ain't keeping no meeting. They'll be breaking the law, right? So you have to be aware that there are meetings and you're expected to attend those meetings. We know that there will be emergencies like everybody else, family, children, as the case would be. And you may be excused for a meeting or two, but of course, try to catch up. In addition to being on the board too, as mentioned, there are a number of what we call subcommittees, because the subcommittees are there to look at a specific purpose. Whether you have a marketing proposal, the marketing committee will look at that. Whether you have an industrial relation issue, the HR committee will look at that and then make a recommendation or provide information to the board of directors. You might be on one of those committees as well. That committee might be about 3 persons, 4, maybe 2 in some cases, so that we also have to provide the time. But being willing to learn is really, as we would have touted a few years ago, have common sense. And common sense really, in my view, is really looking at that whole aspect of duty of care. And duty of care is willing to receive information, willing to process information, willing to listen, willing to take advice, and of course, willing to have that confidence to make your voice or your contribution be heard, because you are important within the credit union system, whether you're a member or a board of directors. You have equal rights in terms of the democratic process. So those are some of the things I think that should come to the table. And again, take advantage of the opportunities that are provided by the credit union for your own development. And I must say, those opportunities are not only local opportunities. Those are opportunities that are foreign opportunities in terms of seminars, conferences, and so forth. It's an opportunity. And the beauty about that is within you. Learning is within you. So someone cannot take out the learnings from you. It is ingrained. All right. So that is something that is a benefit. So should you leave the organization and not being a board member, you have that knowledge, you have that skill. Of course, when you get deeper into the workings of the board, I saw the board will talk about, and the nominations committee too, will talk about confidentiality and so forth. So meaning that you will be exposed to a lot of confidential information in terms of members' information, credit unions, performance, financials, and so forth. And you ought not to divulge that information outside of the boardroom unless it is within the scope of the credit union's discussion or meeting, as the case would be. Yeah, so I think once you have that, I think it's a good start. It's really, really a good start.
Nigel, I'm Jarvis again. Hello, moderator. While you're on the topic, one important committee is the Education Committee, and part of the Education Committee mandate is educating members and directors and committee coming on that is part of the Education Committee mandate also, because you are also a member. So it's important that we acknowledge the fact that the Education Committee also contribute towards the education of people coming on board and committees and all that, you know. That's part of the mandate. That's it.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, definitely. And as we talk about again the statutory phrase, I think it's important that people understand what that means. And within the Education Committee, that is a statutory appointed committee that is done by the Board of Directors. Whereas we have statutory committees that are elected committees, meaning to come on the board, you must be elected at the annual general meeting. To serve on the credit committee or the supervisory committee, you must be elected at the annual general meeting. However, with the Education Committee, the Board of Directors must appoint an Education Committee, and that's a statutory committee as well, but it is an appointed one. We respond for education, from time to time for members and officers and, maybe looking at the development of the organization through staff, management, as the case should be. Yeah, so it's all about a building process, and I think it is designed like that to ensure that each member could have the opportunity to be part of the decision making, in a more directed way, other than, you're voting at the annual general meeting. Being part of those committees, you make decisions, during the course of time, during the course of the year, which would hold in terms of the longevity of the organization, depending upon the nature and the type of decision that you are part of.
Thank you for that important clarification and point, Mr. Jarvis and Mr. Matthew. The Education Committee is, in fact, a very important committee. Without it, our members wouldn't be informed of certain things, and even the power that they have as a member at that annual general meeting. And as well, helping us, Mr. Matthew, to understand the difference between the statutory elected committees with whom members have the responsibility of voting for the leadership and the management of the organization's future and direction. And then, of course, the board's very important role of appointing those officials and giving them that leadership opportunity, of course, to take the members to shape a public education session and series where members can learn more about Tranquility Credit Union or their credit union that they are part of. So thank you for that clarification. We'll take one more question. If anybody else would like to have or share anything else, even if it's not a question, it could be a comment. Anyone else wants to add or get clarification? One thing I also enjoyed about the presentation was that selflessness. I think Mr. Matthew went through a lot of depth to explain how very selfless and giving of our time we must be in terms of looking for what the best outcome for Tranquility Credit Union should be at the end of the day. We selflessly serve, meaning we don't want to align ourselves with any particular outcome or what we think would be the best direction. We really want to seek, and where we don't know, he did point out, bringing a subject matter expert, bringing persons who can better advise about that, being a team player. He really stressed on a lot of qualities that board members should have when adopting or being considered for this role, or considering yourself for nominations for elections to this role. So those are some really important gems that I picked up this afternoon. Is anyone else willing to share one or two of the things that they may have also learned? Just doing a scan for some hands. All right. Okay, well, this brings us to the next segment of our session. I have a little bit of a surprise for everybody on the call this afternoon. I want to congratulate Miss Tarika Sanicha. Miss Tarika, you were our very early bird this afternoon, one of the first besides our facilitator to log on. So I don't know if Christine could put up a little bit of clap emojis for me. Right, Tarika, congratulations and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being on time. Thank you, Christine. Right, congratulations. You can visit our head office at number 5 Maraval Road to collect a token at your convenience. Right, on behalf of the Marketing Department and Nominations Committee, we want to thank you. And this brings us to the end of our session. I want to invite Christine to just bring a vote of thanks this afternoon to close off our session tonight. Christine?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time out today to join us. We know it was difficult with the weather, but you all made sure and joined us, and not only joined us, were able to participate and gain the knowledge that we need for you all to make that next important step. Also, a great thanks to Mr. Nigel Matthew. We really enjoyed the presentation and your knowledge was well received. We hope that you continue to educate persons in the future as to what they can expect on the different statutory boards. On behalf of Tranquility Credit Union, I'd like to say good night to everyone. If you are still in transit, please reach home safely. If you're already there, enjoy the rest of your night. It was a pleasure hosting you this afternoon.